Welcome to a Sunday Q&A. Hopefully the internet has no stability problems today. My blog Thursday was having, I think, YouTube problems because it seemed like everything else was working fine and I had low latency. But hey, maybe things will go well today. I certainly hope so. I am typing password wrong. There we go. I'm logging into a few things here. Let's show you what I'm messing with here. Fun stuff. We're going to share screen. Share a window. There we go. This is somewhat readable. I think the people get the gist of the diagram. This is how the sausage is made. This is the behind the scenes for as Tom is building things and documenting them. And I'm rebuilding. I've done this before, been a few years. And the lab is always a work in progress of lots of enhancements. And now what I'm doing is rebuilding it in our other office. So yet another lab. And I have the same process I follow for all of these. And I'm documenting the iterations and changes. And the goal today is going to be to show you essentially how the new lab is, essentially laid out, how it works here. And do some learnings for people who go, I wonder how I could build this myself. And by the way, I'm using UniFi and pfSense and XCP-ng because those are the tools I like. Those are the tools we work with clients. But the concepts I teach here through this video, not just today. Today's a live stream where I'm goofing around and letting you ask questions so I can hopefully present the video better. You are the live test audience where I'll answer questions about how this works. But really, it will apply to other systems. You could do this with Proxmox. You could do this with other firewalls. You could do this with other switches. The concepts are what I want to focus on in the beginning. Then I'll get into some of the functional, when I get the video published. For now, this is just a lot of how it works type stuff. Something else worth noting here. Oh, there we go. So people can see the VLANs and things like that. This is what I had shared out the other day, is just showing all the different networks that we have on here and explaining why is going to be what I hopefully can convey for how this works. I'll do some practical examples of showing how we actually use this. And I'm hoping a lot of you get this reference right here at the top that I'll leave up here while I switch. I can't see the chat while I'm in that program. So all these hellos. I don't have any plans on doing a video on Unraid. Techno Tim did a video on it. I mentioned it before, and his video is solid. And he's not the only one. Other people have done it too. I just happen to watch his. I have not watched all of them, but I do know the channel Space Invader 1. There's other channels that are dedicated to Unraid. I don't use Unraid. I looked at it. It doesn't fit my use case, so I'm not going to do an Unraid video. Let's see. I need a router that can ports that can be 2 gigs up, 2 gigs down. I have 2 UniFi access point and a UniFi Express router. What router should I get? Are you asking which UniFi router to get? I believe the UDM, is it the Pro Special Edition? Those support that level of speed. So I think if you're asking about which UniFi one to get, if you're looking for that kind of speed, probably the Pro ones are where you want to go there. I think they have the speeds listed on it, but the ones that have 10 gig support those much faster routing speeds for sure. Hello. Netherlands. Kind of cool. I figure by doing this a little bit earlier, let me grab my water. I would have more people. I do these late sometimes on Sundays, but doing it earlier lets more people from Europe join, which I always think is really cool. Quick question off topic is I just found out they're discontinuing the Android app. I don't really. It's still available. It's not going to get updates. I don't really know the long-term answer. Maybe someone will pick up using it. I don't know. The Android Sync is by far not the most important piece of the puzzle for me. It's helpful, but not I'm not going to stop using Syncthing just because it's not available on my phone. That's all that sucks, but not oh no, I'm going to drop Syncthing. I'll look around to if I run into a need for it. The only thing it does is synchronize the photos faster, then I can use some of the other tools. But yeah, do not route storage. Man, I say that a lot. Question for Tom. Thoughts on putting ISP connection on a switch directly into a firewall? Putting ISP connections on a switch versus I mean, you can. Is there a need to? Like, I don't have a need for my ISP provision device to be on a switch, but many times we do for our clients because sometimes it's one switch that's providing access to multiple firewalls. I mean, there's not really a problem doing it. It's more of what's the problem you're trying to solve by doing it. All the way from the country of Florida. Thanks, Drew. Florida is its own country. So I haven't even looked. So there's a fork that's going to get updates. I figured someone will manage it. It's an open source project, so I didn't bother digging into the why. And sometimes I don't react right away on purpose because I'm like, oh, look, drama. I'm sure that will sort itself out. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And people want to know the drama the moment it happens, and I always kind of go, I'd rather get real things done and see how that shakes out, unless I can contribute to solving the problem in some way. I don't code, and I would not be a package maintainer for Syncthing. So is the UniFi Aggregation Switch Pro the great way to incorporate 10 gig into my system? Currently using the UDM SE and UniFi 24 port PoE. I don't see why not. I have them. I think they're great. So I don't have any problems. I have a couple of those. All the 10 gig stuff from UniFi just works very well. So I've been using it for years. Sure, you can put an ISP into a switch. I use it all the time. 40net, 40 switches, their ability to MC lag. Well, and that's sometimes why we do it is when we're doing an HA setup, there's a switch in front of the firewall. That's pretty common. So as long as you configure it properly. Wisconsin. All right. I don't have any good videos on the access control list on 802.1x. If you're referring to like the authorization on it, it's a headache. People seem to like it, but I always see it broken. It's one of those things, people like complexity sometimes, and it doesn't always solve their problem. It's kind of a niche use case. I argue a lot of times against complexity because many of the things I solve, many of the things people pay me to consult on are how their complicated systems are where their failure point was. They actually wouldn't have had a failure if it wasn't for the complicated system they have. So I always ask like people, what is the goal you're trying to reach? And let's try to get there in the most simplistic way possible, because that's often the most maintainable way to build it. It's the same reason that everyone's like, we need K8s in our lab and let's go full on Kubernetes to run my 3 things. I watch those people frequently break things. And so I'm always like hesitant to recommend some of that. Have you tried BGP with UniFi yet? I can think of 0 times I've ever needed BGP for UniFi. There's not, like, if I were to do a Venn diagram of people asking me for BGP and people who would be using UniFi equipment, the crossover is not really there. I always thought it was an odd choice. I don't look at them. I know they're getting a lot better and they've certainly improved their firewalls dramatically, but they're not my go-to for like, oh, I need BGP and fancy routing. I'm like, well, there seems to be other limitations in UniFi. So I haven't even played with it. I don't really, it's just not high on my priority list of something that I go, wow, that's solving my problem for me that I have with UniFi. We don't have. So since the merger, we just use Hoodoo. We don't have a wiki anymore. The wiki went away when the merger happened. So all the documentation goes in Hoodoo, HUDU. It's funny. This comes up a lot. Software-defined networking has been around for years. I've done videos on SDN and XCP-ng. So it's like Proxmox is catching up to XCP-ng by finally releasing their SDN. It's the opposite that's happening on here. So yes, it does have it. Oh yes, complexity equals billable hours. Yes. We had to talk to someone the other day that just had one of the most convoluted ways they wanted to set it up, and we stopped. He said, I can sell you 100 hours to build this thing that makes no sense, but we could, or hear me out, we can fix this the most common way to do it, and it'll be under 10 hours. Or we can do the other thing that you had an idea for. And they're like, oh, I thought I needed to do all that. And sometimes people really think they need to do it in a more complex way. And I'm always like, no, you don't actually. You can do things in a more simplistic manner frequently. I probably talk myself out of a lot of billable hours. And this is very true. Like the Bearded IT Dad said, once you step into things like BGP, you're talking Cisco, Juniper, Arista. You're not talking as much UniFi. That's just where there's the BGP management is rarely UniFi sitting at the edge of your network to do any of that. How do you implement port security? See, this might be another one of those challenges that someone's having of, let me actually switch to mine. I'm going to switch screens here. All right, let me share it. I'll do it in UniFi because it's easy. So here's the UniFi. Here's all the port. Yeah, I want this one. What is the port security goal you're trying to do? Are you afraid someone's going to plug into this? Matter of fact, I need to fix this one. I mean, if I'm worried that someone's going to plug into it, I could click disabled. If I only, and as you may have seen, it was set to the CGNAT. So it's set to CGNAT. Now and if I say block all, there we go. Now it'll only do that network and end of story. So that's how I do port security. That's the problem. I'm trying to figure out what problem you're trying to solve. If you're worried about people plugging things in, then you can lock it out. I believe there is under manual here. Is this an option? Yeah, maybe you can't. I thought there's a way to do lock it to a certain MAC address, but I'm gonna switch it back to this. If someone's in my back office just plugging things in, I have bigger problems than worried about if they can get to that. Matter of fact, I got to fix this one. Wall. There we go. Yeah, I would say I don't know how to say his name. He's part of our group of YouTube friends, but Appallard's Adventures, AAPALRD, has some good videos on that topic. This comes up almost every live stream now. I have a whole video on content filtering, but Zorus, ZORUS, that's the tool I use. Do you use tunnel addresses on the WireGuard instance, even if they are not needed in a route site to site? I am going to do a new video on that topic, so I can cover it all. essentially, the video I'll do, and because, like I said, because I built a new lab, I'm going to go ahead and make a new video. But the site-to-site tunnel for VPN, follow Christian's video. Christian, if you type in video, it's Christian McDonald did a video on it. I build it exactly like Christian McDonald did. I know his video is 2 years old, and I've not done one, so I'll talk about it. It looks a little bit different, but very, very little. I think you can follow 99% of everything he says in that video, and it works. I think they just changed some minor things that's been fixed, so I'll probably do an updated WireGuard site-to-site video, but yeah. What do you think of the new subscription per point rule set on UniFi gateways? I have a whole video on talking about what threat modeling, like with Snort and Suricata, what they miss, and it doesn't change because they're using Suricata on the end. So what do I think of it? It's an extra layer of security, but it's a really weak layer of security. I'm running a Palo Alto PA440, which has a prefix limit and a few Debian routers. I am mostly about home use. Because I have my own AS for I don't do IPv6. Just not enough stuff works on it. So I always disable IPv6, which is going to make at least numerous people leave comments of anger. I managed to get everything connected to TailScale, and it's slow. I don't understand just slow. You're going to have to say, like, do you have a latency problem? I don't know. Is it the Cloudflare tunnel? Is it your internet access is slow? That's not an easy one to answer where your slow problem is at all. More on topic. I have a storage network on its own VLAN, which connects to my NAS and XCP hosts and on VMs. I have blocked internet access on that VLAN. Thoughts on that setup? See, I don't even need to block internet access on those VLANs because they don't have routing. This is one of the reasons that my other diagram that I was sharing earlier, let me pull this one up. Share this tab. So the reason this, and I put the words don't route storage, I have VLAN 20 defined. And that's it. So if we go in here, and let's go to the new lab I'm building, the actual thing I'm copying off of here. So if we look at it, settings, networks, VLAN 20 is defined right here. But if we go to, let me pull up the pfSense. Let me log into that and I'll switch screens. Because this is the part where I think people are going to get confused, or hopefully not. Right here is the pfSense. We only have 2 VLANs defined. But when you go over here, you can see VLAN 20. This is on the same network. When you don't define any IP addresses in pfSense, you don't define the VLAN, you don't define the network, there's nothing. There's not even DHCP, and that's not by accident either. When I'm building the storage network, I build the VLAN, and I implicitly define all the different IP addresses in there, and that's it. And by the way, none of them have a gateway. So I don't need to block. You can block internet. It doesn't make a difference. Is more the point. There's not a way to accidentally route storage on my storage network because there's simply no routing on that. I mean, if I was to build a government level high security network where I'm super worried about that threat model, go ahead and build complexity of setting up Radius with MAC authentication. And it's a good learning experience to do it. with most of the businesses and even some of the larger ones we deal with, it's really not where their threat model is. They're not that worried from a secure facility standpoint of having someone plug something in. It's something that could happen. But by the way, when someone plugs something in, if you have a lockdown network, you should be notified that someone plugged something in. There's step one. Two, being on the same network. If you were to come over to one of my networks and plug something in to a secure network, what would you do? You would attack me how? Because being on the network is not a level of authentication to me. That's how they define zero trust. Proximity is in location on a network does not define or should not define here in 2024 your security. You will find locked down shares with usernames and passwords. You will find locked down patched systems that don't accept connections from things. I mean, you'd have to probably come. Yeah, if I had something internally with SSH open, now you have the opportunity to try to get it, but all my SSH is set up with key authentication. So you would also have to have the keys as well. So, I mean, it's not that there's no risk, but you have to have some other pieces of information. Because of that, it's not the likely attack. And by the way, spend time reading different reports and you'll find a lack of companies that get hacked, which companies are getting hacked every day. And it's just not this way. It's always they clicked on an email or someone left some port open to the public internet. I think that's a terrible idea, but if you have to, you have to. Don't route storage is always what I tell people. Does you know much with IPsec these days? I have a site-to-site working nicely, but looking for remote clients too. OpenVPN is pretty much where all the user VPNs still go to, is a lot of OpenVPN. Site to site, I prefer WireGuard, but usually for interoperability reasons, we probably have way more IPsec than WireGuard. And that comes down to interoperability. A lot of times we have a pfSense on our side and something else on the other side, and the common language they're going to speak is going to be IPsec. Hi, Tom. It's Troy. Can you share your LAN VLAN setup for your Homelab and point me to a good video? That's what I'm working on as a new one. My older videos, I think they're still accurate. They're just maybe not as well presented. So I'm working on a new video that I'll probably have out this week on the lab. For rack mounted UPS, do you prefer battery cartridges or do you buy batteries individually and wire them up? Pretty much all the UPSs they buy are complete. Like we have some APCs, we have some extreme power. I have both. They both work great. They both come with the batteries pre-installed, but they can be removed. But when we bought them, they came with the batteries in them. Oh yeah, the APs are 10 gig. Yes. TailScale equals network voodoo. I really like overlay networks. ZeroTier was probably one of the first companies I seen become popular doing it. TailScale was next. Nebula has something similar, but theirs works a little bit different. I've done videos on all of them. Then NetBird came out, and NetBird's equally a really cool way to do it. I think NetBird did a good job with it as well. The applications are laggy. Hard to say. You've set up so much complexity, it's harder to figure out where, because you've got Docker Swarm on there, you've got Cloudflare tunnels. You have to start doing some one-on-one troubleshooting of, is it slow directly connecting to the IP versus Cloudflare tunnel? Like try to connect to it without the tunnel. You got to break it down to figure out where the latency is coming from or what's making it laggy. Have you come across anyone running Passpoint on their Wi-Fi? I have not. Nothing provides DHCP on my on that network. I don't need DHCP on my storage network. I define all my storage. when I'm defining the storage, there's not a need for, there you go. Now it fits. So I set VLAN 20, and I'll set each port to VLAN 20 that's going to be using storage. That's the simple way to do it. So if I were to connect to one of these ports here, this one would also be like VLAN 20. Then I would connect this port, and this port, and this port would be set to VLAN 20. And I would define the IP addresses for these. Let's see. I have all my devices in a router 1 gig network, and I wanted my server PC connected 2.5. Well, I have to buy a 2.5 gig chip to hook up all my devices, and will slow down. I mean, it's only as fast as the slowest link. So if you have 2.5 gig, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, you can't traverse the 1 gig switch. So you're only as it's only as fast as the lowest link that's in the chain. If something down the chain beyond you is 1 gig, it doesn't slow everything down. It's just look at the path, the data path from where you want it to be. I have, for example, a 10 gig switch that my computer is plugged into and the NAS is plugged into, but my pfSense, my upstream router, is only 1 gig. But my internet is less than 1 gig, so that's never a bottleneck for me. Can it be routing issue from TailScale and Cloudflare tunnels? So it'll be faster site to site instead of TailScale. Possibly. You're going to have to test each link that you set up, because it's confusing to me to use both the Cloudflare tunnels and TailScale. So let's see. Trying to follow all these. How do you feel about Cloudflare offerings, particularly around the ZTNA stuff? I think Cloudflare's offering is novel, but my challenge with it, it's novel until it's not. Have a plan B. Large companies change their mind about things. It's not open source. It's not something you can host. It's something they're providing. They're giving it to you for free until they're not. And that's how I feel about these companies. Lure everybody in, and it's kind of I think Cloudflare, I can't get into the heads of them. I don't know them, but I think they're doing it for the right reason. I think they're giving away a free service. They said, hey, this is great. The problem is, and I actually think what's going to get it shut down may be different than them raising prices on it. They have enough market dominance where they can give away something for free that other companies would charge for just to get you hooked into their services. That's possible. The other side is threat actors have been ramping up their use of Cloudflare tunnels. So I have a feeling Cloudflare is going to start charging for it just because they want to stop all the threat actors, because it's become very common for threat actors to use Cloudflare tunnels because you can't block them. You can't block Cloudflare without breaking large portions of the internet. So the threat actors go, hey, why don't we just stick everything between a Cloudflare tunnel? It's hard to figure out who's a real Cloudflare tunnel and who's a threat actor. Oh, when the batteries go bad, we buy new batteries for them. Yes, aggravation switch. Is it going to use pfSense with the UDM SE or stick with UniFi UDM? I don't think it's a great idea to have both. It's complicated. I mean, I only have multiple firewalls because I do testing at my office for videos and for clients. I don't see a reason to keep both of them. Use one or the other. If you have a feature you want in pfSense, then get rid of the UniFi and use the pfSense. But if you have features you'd rather be using in UniFi and you don't have any need for a pfSense, why have the extra expense? UniFi Layer 3 VLAN versus pfSense VLAN. Where do you configure VLANs for home user? Always configure them in the pfSense for anything that needs routing, because, well, I mean, even for most businesses, we do it that way. And the reason why comes back to simplicity. I don't want to have more than one location I'm looking for things. And if I happen to have a pfSense and then I have a UniFi switch, there's use cases, but they're more limited. You don't necessarily need to do the routing in there. And the ACLs, like in terms of like what rules you can put in place, I don't know where UniFi is at that. I've had a lot of people tell me it doesn't work right. I haven't tested it because I think it's still in beta. Maybe they'll get some better layer 3 routing in the switches, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, eventually I'm sure they'll fix it. I just don't know where it's at today. This is not something I've ever done where you take a GPU and pump it out to a display port. I know people have done it. I know it's possible. I never do it. So I think Jeff from Craft Computing and Wendell from Level 1 Techs, between the two of them, they've talked about that topic enough that would be the place to check for that. I have not tried FRR with pfSense and Layer 3 along with UniFi at all. Inter-VLAN routing, UniFi DMP. I don't think it's very beta, and I'm not sure. What are you trying to solve? Anytime someone tells me they want to do that, I start with, what are you trying to solve, or you're just trying to figure it out? The documentation is not great, which is what's also leading to people not doing videos on it, because we don't have a good source for documentation to build the videos. Those of us that create the videos on it. So let's see. Hoping new Synology units announced soon. UK TrueNAS supplier is non-existent. Yeah, I mean, other than building it yourself, I don't know what IX Systems shipping is like over there. Having multiple VLANs on a UniFi switch with a dedicated non-routable VLAN for data network, how do you handle firmware updates for the switch? Have NFS shares running XCP? Do I shut down VMs first? Oh, yeah. That's the fun part. You do have to shut down the switch and reboot it, which means you'll shut down all of the VMs on it. One thing that works really well in XCP-ng, and let me pull up my XCP-ng system. You just put, I've done this before doing the storage videos, but XCP-ng actually makes this super easy. The way you do it in XCP-ng is you just press the enable maintenance mode button. Enable maintenance mode will pause all the VMs, and then I can reboot the switch or update the firmware in the switch and then turn it back on. So that's the easy solution for that. I game via TailScale. My Unraid server running Steam headless Docker would. I don't know. I've never run Steam headless Docker, so I really don't have an answer on that one. I don't know the answer to your question. I see you've asked it a couple times. I don't know. I know it can route at full 10 gig speeds. I don't know what you're asking about RDMA and the switch for. RDMA is usually in the cards for faster transfers. How do you get your UniFi device pics for your diagram? Looks good. You can find them all on my GitHub. So there are. I'll drop a link to everyone who wants these. So yeah, they're all available right here on my GitHub. Which one was just done? This one here. Hey, look how UniFi works. This particular one has all the drawings of UniFi in it. So grab that one and you'll have a copy of it too. So they did add that feature on there now. That's cool. So you can actually get granular with some of the controls. I don't know if I'll make any more videos about Security Union. It's just a timing thing. And Security Union themselves has a lot of good videos on it. That's why I recommend watching theirs. He buys Ubiquiti stuff from Secret. Nope, not at all. We buy things through Ingram Micro. Did I see Veeam and XCP-ng working together? Yes, they're working on some things together. That is correct. Open source alternatives to NSX. I've not used the NSX, so I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge to do a feature comparison because I don't do any NSX. Huh? If it doesn't work for you, then don't use UniFi. I have no idea if they have that feature. Not a clue on that one there. Back to some of this. So where is the too many things open? There we go. This is what I'll be doing a video on. This is how all the lab stuff is defined right now. So I've got all the different lab and defined in here, but as I pointed out, only the 100 and 3434 are defined in the pfSense. This is the pfSense that sits in front of this, the XCP-ng system. Oh, this XCP-ng system. We're going to close that one. We only need to show one. Let's see. How do you handle shutting down infra during a power outage? Mythology NAS shuts down on low battery state and hope everything will start correctly afterwards. Set up something in Proxmox. Watch Techno Tim's video on Nut Server. Great video. You can use your Synology as a Nut server, but you can, whatever you want to build as the server that talks to the UPS, and then it can talk to all the other devices to tell them to shut off. So that's the solution for it. It's the easiest solution. I don't know there's another easier one, but Techno Tim's done the best deep dive I've seen on it. Do you use infrastructure as code to manage your systems network, something like Ansible? Not often, but yes. We just finished an Arista setup for a client, and we used Ansible to define it. It was a client request. It's certainly not something we do every day. It is not the nature of what we do. So it's kind of, if someone says, hey, I'd like to define this, and it can be convenient to do so, where you define all your networking in Ansible. I know a lot of people who use it. I'm just not really among them. It's laziness because I do so much UniFi. And we also, at our company, CNWR, we do a lot of Meraki. And Meraki you just use the web interface and define everything. So it's fine to do. Yes. Well, the pools are defined like that. So this is something about the way UniFi. I close all these things I have open. The way it works in XCP-ng, we can actually show this in real time. If I want to go here to the pool, and there's more than one host. So for example, we have 2 hosts in a pool. Once you put hosts in a resource pool in XCP-ng, automatically when I go to that pool, if I create storage, networking, whatever, if I add a storage, add a VM, add a network, define the VLAN for it, and hit create, it automatically and instantly creates that network on all hosts in that system. They instantly get it. So resource pools, it's called pool, but it's actually fully spelled out would be resource pool. This is a way you could do that in your Proxmox as well. Proxmox does support resource pools. They're implicit in XCP-ng. I feel like you have to, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a Proxmox expert, so flame me in the comments for not getting it right if I don't. I think you have to put them in a cluster in Proxmox and then start defining what is and isn't a shared resource. It's kind of a different concept in Proxmox. Once you put things in a pool in XCP-ng, it automatically turns everything into a shared resource. That's the nature of it. Matter of fact, the systems in some way lose their individuality because they're now part of a shared resource pool. So yes, if I hit create on this, it's going to create it on all hosts. There's only 2 in this particular pool, but if there were 20 hosts, 30 hosts in this pool, I create it once and it automatically is in all the other ones. Is it safe to have just 2 hosts? I feel very safe with 2 hosts. I don't know why it wouldn't be safe to have 2 hosts. I'm moving my VLANs to my layer 3 switch. My pfSense will be internet gateway. And SG4100 is struggling with 2.5 gig inter-VLAN routing. Yeah, I never need inter-VLAN routing. I wouldn't think, whenever I see someone struggling with inter-VLAN routing, I often ask the question, why are you inter-VLAN routing? Like, well, I want the NAS over here, but I don't want it on the same network as me. I'm like, well, that's not great. Generally, that's the don't route storage thing that comes up quite a bit. When we do our larger installs of XCP-ng, we have another one that I'll be doing a video on. I was just at the office, and I think I got a picture of me. Yeah, this thing is massive. These are some of the servers that we're racking at the office. These are really nice, but there's 4 servers per server. So 1, 2, 3, 4 times 4 servers, because there's 4 blades in there. This is 24 servers running XCP-ng, but there'll be one resource pool. And that resource pool, we only got to define it once, and it automatically is defined in all of them. This is where the scalability I talk about of XCP-ng, this is one of the reasons we like it. It scales really well. I know you can use, and by the way, you can use with XCP-ng as well. You can use Terraform and define things inside of Proxmox. Absolutely you can. You don't have to, though. You could define them just using the web UI, and it works perfectly fine. Someone will want to see the, I'll share some of these pictures. You can see this is all a work in progress. So bear with me here. Yeah, these are some of the servers we're all setting up right now. We have some more cables coming in and everything else, but yeah, this is what that setup looks like for now. They're all running on 220. They do not run on 120. And for those of you in the UK, yes, the power system here in the US is mostly 120, but yes, we actually have 220 available. This is the current lab. It's not clean yet because there's too many things going on, but it's slowly getting there. Slowly. It takes time. It takes time before we build that out. It's actually pretty wild how much heat these things pull too. It's a lot. Do all things have to be on all nodes for network resource being a pool? Ideally, yes. There's lots of hacky ways you can do it. You can have a variety of servers, and that's fine. Matter of fact, if we go back over here to this one, these hosts are not identical. This particular host is a Ryzen 7 with only, I think, one network port. Yeah, this only has a single network port. But if we go to my other host, this one has two network ports on it. I don't use the second one, but I can. It's available to use. But when you go to create something in a resource pool, because they're not symmetrical, and I create a network, it doesn't let me choose it because it can only do when they're the same. They don't have to be the same brand network card. They just have to be in the same position. And you can move positions of network cards, E0, EAST1, et cetera, et cetera. Ideally, you want symmetrical. So all the servers is the same as can be within reason. Identical, as in the photo I have here, is awesome. These are all identical servers, so it doesn't matter with these. But yeah, it'll work without being in that. Yeah, I believe all this is flash. Storage is going to be attached to a SAN for this exact project. They happen to have their own storage. If I were architecting it, I would have probably used TrueNAS. We just built one very similar to this with TrueNAS. This client already has under contract and under warranty, I think it's a NetApp system. So they're going to continue on using their NetApp server. Works fine with NetApp. So that's, yeah. Can you remember the worst loss of equipment you've had in a single instance? Flooding, lightning? Probably fire destroyed a network at an accounting firm. I don't know. Besides fire, it was amazing how many of the servers still worked. So the power went out, but the servers had sucked in a lot of smoke and smelled terrible. The good news is we're actually able to get the data. Even I don't have pictures of it because it happened a long time ago. The server faceplates had melted, but when we pulled all the melted faceplate off and shorted out the power connector to like the contact button, it booted, which is like, yeah. Yeah, NetApp is solid. The client seems to like it. They think it's expensive, but they're also going, it hasn't failed us. And yes. Yeah, the UI is smart enough to stop you from being too dumb in there. Once again, people always recommend Ceph until they realize the complexity of it and go, oh, do I really need it? When I do my other video, I'll even mention, because it's very similar to this setup, and we use TrueNAS, and TrueNAS will perform better for less money than Ceph. That's probably the easiest way to answer it. A TrueNAS HA system will outperform a Ceph HA system for the same dollar amount. That's where it is. So people recommend, but budgets recommend more so than people. I would say it's probably easy to describe. Budgets really recommend hardware way more than the people building the hardware do. Because I mean, I don't have any problem with Ceph. I like Ceph. I think my friends at 45 Drive do a great job, and that's who we work with to build out Ceph clusters. But if you read through the recommendations for a properly built out HA Ceph cluster, and you read out what it would cost you to build an HA TrueNAS, you'll find out that the TrueNAS is cheaper. So it's driven by budget more than want. I want really fancy things. The budget doesn't always want really fancy things. Can you share how you set up your management LAN VLAN for your Homelab, or point to a good video diagram? I think you asked this question already. I don't have a new video on it. If you look in like my lab tour videos, my old ones, there'll probably some information in there. I'm doing a new one, probably be out next week. So thoughts on multi-cloud setups? I mean, yes is the answer. Budget is the question. That's basically what it comes down to. Should you keep two, if you got X amount of storage in point A and X in B, does your budget allow for it? It's always better to have more copies of your data, but does your budget allow for it? Kind of the same question again that people asking, like, I want to do this way. Does your budget allow for it? Absolutely. It's a great idea, but then you're now paying for two places. Budget. That's often why so many people don't have nice things. Yeah. If we all had the budget, we'd all have really, really nice things. Ceph is designed for hyperscale storage. That's why servers use it, like CERN. It's, yeah, I mean, you could also find this document from CERN talking about ZFS. So, and some of this has to do with CERN doesn't run just one thing. CERN's obviously a pretty big outfit, but CERN runs, I think, one of the largest ZFS setups out there. I remember seeing that before. So I was looking for it, trying to find the thing. But yeah, CERN does that too. It comes down to, like, each one of these always comes down to the same things. Talking about the use case, figuring it out. And sometimes you get both. You may have some high performance ZFS storage and your longer term storage, because I admit Ceph has a really cool feature for where you could just define one storage space and then you can keep expanding it on the back end. So it's great for archival storage for that reason. Multicloud is a mess. Yes. Do you have a preferred cloud provider you work with? Clients and they want a controller installed in the cloud instance? I don't know. I like Linode. I've not had any problems with Linode, but I've also not had problems with DigitalOcean. And Riley from HostiFi, he likes Vultr. But I usually don't recommend the people that contact us that want a hosted controller. Almost always, I recommend a HostiFi, because the problem is they won't maintain their controller. We had someone, that this is unfortunately where I have a lot of mixed feelings on this. We've had people hire us to set up, they've already got the cloud instance. Hey, set up my controller. And I always warn them, what are you going to do to maintain it? Oh, I'll update it. And then they contact us because they got hacked and they hadn't maintained it. They hadn't updated it since they had us install it. So I push more people towards HostiFi than anything else because they'll maintain and update it. Are there MSPs, specialty MSPs for mega yacht security? No idea, but we have been, I have done consulting for, we actually have a yacht manufacturer that we help with their internal security. And we've done not managed, but consulting jobs, for yachts, a couple super yachts. It was really interesting. I prefer ZFS RAID over hardware RAID, but the Dell controllers are pretty reliable, so it's not terrible to run. And I definitely have situations where I'm running Dell systems because it came with it. It works fine. You set up the notices in the Dell iDirect to let you know if there's any RAID problems, and have a great day. Oh, let's see. Keep going here. I guess one of the questions I still have, lots of questions flying around, or comments. So let's look at my pfSense. And Also, why is my phone not muted? Mute. I did my video on Signal, and yes, I get so many Signal messages. I've like been in more group chats. All right, there we go. Phone's off. Sorry for the distraction here. Make sure I'm caught up on the questions. Here, general story on how one sets up a yacht network. I forget what tool they were using. This is before Starlink was popular, and I don't know if Starlink's the right solution for this. I don't use Starlink and know enough about it. I forget what tool they were using. They were using pfSense. That's how they found me. So the yacht network is it's actually rather simple. I mean, it's a big yacht, but it's the same as a big building. It's harder to wire a yacht. There's different challenges, I should say, wiring a yacht. It's well suited not for me or the cabling people I know, but for people who build yachts. It turns out they know how to wire them, and we're helping them with some failover stuff. Most of the consulting was like UniFi, failover, and a few things like that. I think we used Nessus for vulnerability scanning. Back over to the pfSense. I have a virtualized pfSense, and this is a topic that a lot of people have asked questions about, is how do you simulate your client's networks? How would you get a public IP address on your internal network to mimic your client's IPs so you can do something like actually, that's what the photo is a common setup. So let me jump over to the photos and talk about this real quick. It's about use cases. So you take this is the thing, it's not complicated NAT. It's less complicated than you think to put public IP addresses on a pfSense. So what you could do is, we know that we have a bunch of VLANs defined, and I called them floating over here. So if we look over here, we see this WAN lab 1, WAN lab 2, and they're all floating because they're not defined. So I have a software installed pfSense, a virtualized pfSense. And with the virtualized pfSense, I can then emulate on the WAN lab 1 and WAN lab 2 client networks to build a VPN. So if I wanted to take a couple of pfSenses and pre-program them, I would assign the red, like WAN lab 1 and WAN lab 2, and now they would be assigned that. And then if I need to get behind those pfSenses, well, I can assign lab 101 and lab 102 to the two black ones right here. And then that would allow me to take a emulated pfSense to emulate their firewall to get to the real pfSense in the real world. This is like hard until you get it. Once any of my staff have worked with me on it, they go, oh, well, that's easy. This is really simple to do. And it is. So let's look at how we actually do that by going to the pfSense and logging into it and show you what it looks like. Because I've had people think you need BGP for this, and I'm like, actually, you don't. All you have to do is give it the name, what you prefer. I like the name WAN lab because that makes sense to me. It's in my lab. It's emulating WAN. I could call it emulated WAN. You assign the IP address. And now, well, the IP address you assign has to be the gateway for your client. So this is a demo IP address for those of you that know what this is. This demo IP address would be the gateway. So you have to understand your client's network, and you can assign it the gateway to your pfSense, and then you assign their pfSense, the real world one for the client. You just simply put give it its IP address. That's it. That's all. And pfSense is smart enough to figure out how to route this. And it's dead easy to do this. You just punch in, if I wanted this to be Cloudflare's IP range, I could make it Cloudflare's IP and hit save, and then the WAN lab would be Cloudflare's IP address. Now, I'm doing it as a /24 as part of the demo here. You have to obviously know the network, and I didn't want to leave. I had to change it from, we had client network stuff in here before, so I went and switched it. But yeah, this pfSense now is able to emulate that. It's really not that complicated, and this allows you to easily set up and build out networks. And this is also why I have CGNAT installed. The CGNAT is what gives this pfSense and any other firewalls, because just in general, when I'm doing firewall testing, all the UniFi firewalls I set up, I throw them on CGNAT internally because they don't need public IP addresses. They're for our lab for testing. And if, for example, I wanted to just do a demo on a couple firewalls, and I said, let me take this UDM Pro SE and maybe this other UniFi one, and I want to have them talking to each other. So the WAN on both of them is on CGNAT, and that allows me to easily do a VPN between them, for example. So I can just do a VPN and then they work fine. It's not that difficult to do inside of pfSense. And you can then look at the pfSense over here and see all the IPs. So as I change IPs in pfSense, and the same thing goes for emulating client networks. So for example, I'm emulating right here 10.1.1.1 or 10.1.10.1. So this is the IP. Let me make sure that one is actually giving out DHCP. So let's go over here. Services, DHCP server, lab 101. Yep, it's giving out IP addresses. Perfect. So I know it's all configured properly. So now we go over here to the Zen Orchestra. There's my Debian 12 lab. There's the network. It's on lab. We'll change it to lab 101. We're going to change it in real time here. And there we go. It's now 10.10.109. And if we go back to our pfSense and look for it, there it is, 10.10.109, Debian 12 lab. That's how quickly you can just move things in and out of the lab. I can move it to any other one of these. WAN address is all funny. So you actually black hole segment of the internet for your environment. There's a reason I do it in a virtualized pfSense. Because if we're trying to work, if our pfSense that comes into the company, I don't want to define it there, because then we would actually break our access to the client, so we wouldn't be able to access their IPs. So when you do it in a virtualized pfSense, you're now one abstraction layer down, so you're not worried about it because you're just setting up the pfSenses that you're going to be sending to the client. Or, we've set up UniFi the same way. Anything we're going to be sending to the client, if it's a whatever, we like to emulate their network. But it's really just that simple to do this. We can define this in a matter of minutes. Give me the IP addresses for the client. I'll punch them in. I then go to the ports, assign the ports, lab or whatever, and you're done. That's it. And the same thing goes for the UniFi. If I wanted to plug someone's firewall into port 28, so this is the port 28 on this, all I have to do, hit this little pull down, and I can type in WAN lab, and I can now physically bring that port to the real world, or I can go lab 101. And then this port would now be connected to the virtual pfSense. So if I need to emulate an entire client network because I'm prepping a bunch of servers that I'm going to go shipping to them, I can now build the network to match their network, so there's no changing of IPs when it gets there. That's the beauty of how the lab works, and that's what I'm going to do the video on. I just trying to figure out the clearest way to present all that to make this so people can understand how to implement it, but don't get stuck on the details of how does this all work. More Lawrences. You are spoofing public IPs. Yes, we in a virtual pfSense emulate the client's IPs. Therefore, we can set up things in our lab to be defined. For example, if I'm going to do a site-to-site VPN, and I got, easy example here. I got a couple firewalls, and I want to go ship these to the client. And I want them to have a site-to-site VPN. I want to test it. but I don't want to have to change the IPs when I get there. I want to be able to put these in a box and say, plug WAN into WAN on each of these, and it'll work. That's why we do it that way. This allows us, without any worries of changes or different from when we get it there to the data center, to predefine everything exactly as it is on the client. So all those little steps are just, they're all tested and done in the lab. Makes it a lot easier. Spoofing, emulating, yes. Yeah, it can be a little hard to follow some of it, but the oh, you know what? I just realized I can do this. I can now flip between all of these. Export as. Sure. Save. Those things that popped in my head like, hey, I could make this more presentable. Oh, the dark mode doesn't come with it. I didn't export the background. I mean, I can make the dark mode come with it. You can't read any of the white text, but you can read the dark text, and that's what matters, right? So now I can switch between what I'm doing here. But yeah, it's like I said, presenting it like this, I'm keeping it simple. The one at the current office is really complex. So I didn't want to do a video on that one because I have too many things in the way. I'm doing a video on the new lab we're building because I haven't added as much complexity. The reason we add complexity to it is not for the sake of complexity. Things just get more complicated as you go on because you have so many things you're doing in the lab and you have so many projects going at once. Because this is a brand new lab that we're setting up in Toledo, before everything's plugged in and complicated, I'm going to do a presentation on it. Yeah, I love draw.io. That's why I mentioned earlier, I have a link if you find it, my GitHub is not hard to find at all. It's linked on my website. If you go to my GitHub though, absolutely, you'll find all my drawings. I mean, I give them away for free. All these different ones I do, people go, well, can I have a template? Yeah, you can have the one I used in this video. I mean, I borrow from my own templates all the time because I don't like doing them all from scratch. I'd rather start and then modify as needed. Why Toledo? That's just where our building is. So there's two sides to my company. For those of you that don't know, well, there's two companies technically. There is, this is, I like this Venn diagram. It made me happy. So I'm part owner of CNWR. I'm whole owner of Lawrence Systems. But the reason for the diagram isn't to display that. The reason the diagram is, what does Lawrence Systems do? And legal name is Lawrence Technology Services. Lawrence Technology Services. I like to call myself Lawrence Systems because it's easier to say. We make educational content and media production. I use my technical expertise to build that. MSP for SMB and IT consulting. I am on that side of the CNWR. I help with consulting. So that's where my job is. Our main office happens to be in Toledo. That's where our building is. So that's where the lab and everything is. We have another one here in Detroit, but we're trying to consolidate everything into Toledo building because it's bigger. Do you place firewall behind core switches? We have hotel clients who do this, distribute WAN access to IDFs. So yeah, sometimes you have to. It just depends on the setup. ECC is a nice to have, but not required. So it's a nice to have on any computer, not just TrueNAS, but it's not a requirement. The number of people that seem to really think it's a requirement. Yeah, what is that? I should remember the link. JRS has a link. They just talked about this they've talked about it frequently, actually, on the 2.5 Admins podcast. It's ECC. I mean, if you have high-end systems, you generally find ECC in them. So I don't think it's bad at all or a waste of money to have ECC. But roll back 20 minutes ago when I kept saying most of the choices are not driven by wants, they're driven by budget. So the ECC is not that. I mean, it's pretty much going to be the standard thing you find in servers today. So that's usually not a budget constraint. Well, they're not. If you're a home user, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah, backups are a requirement. There you go. You are 100% on that one, Veronica. And by the way, not just backups, tested backups, because untested backups are wishful thinking. So I remind people that all the time. If you have not tested your backups, that's just wishful thinking. What do you think when Tim tells me Ubiquiti stuff is less secure compared to the likes of Fortinet, Cisco? Oh, I will point you to the ocean of CVEs of stupidity. No. I don't mean CVEs that you'll find because security's hard, but the ineptitude that seems to have been the past culture and maybe some of the current over at Cisco and Fortinet. I will say Cisco and Fortinet in particular, every time Fortinet finds another hard-coded Cisco finds another hard-coded credential, that's because someone won't let them just run through their own code and find them all. Whenever they find a new one, you're like, you have the source code, folks. You could just like Control F and find passwords, right? But that would take money, and you're not putting the effort into that anymore. Fortinet, Fortinet's an entire. I have a whole video on Fortinet about security. I would say Ubiquiti ranks up there quite well. When it comes to security, they've got a good security team. All companies are going to have flaws. Ubiquiti has not had any egregious or stupid flaws, though. I can't remember any recent ones, which is awesome. By the way, for those that didn't know, if you're curious about this, Ubiquiti is currently worth over $20 billion. So when people think they're just some small company, they're not. They're pretty big. Test for sure. Do you prefer going wider or taller, more smaller drives or few density? I don't. It comes down to a lot of pricing. I usually go for wherever the right price point is. The brand new largest drives are always going to be the most expensive. And once they're a little bit older, you can get a good deal on them. So I generally go as big as is reasonable. And I'm just because those drives may not be as tested. I don't have any affiliate with them, but I need to set one up. I really like I bought a lot of drives from this place. Their prices they have on drives is great. And I've had none of the ones from them have failed. Wendell recommends them too. Wow, 20 terabytes for $269. I mean, that's not bad at all. And they come with a 2-year warranty. So that's a decent price. I mean, I don't know where your budget is. You could be going, that's outrageous. I don't know what your budget is. Do you have stocking Ubiquiti? I currently have no position. I made a bunch of money in Ubiquiti. I regret taking some of my money out, but Ubiquiti is publicly traded. But we had for a while, we had some money in Ubiquiti. We made money on it. I didn't know if it was going to go up any higher. But I don't regret what I did. We were just looking at my stock portfolio today, and we did really, really well because I feel like I owe Jeff Gerling money. Jeff Geerling me and him were talking, and he was just talking about how great ARM was. My wife happened to be there. She goes, "Oh, they're doing really well." My wife does investments. So my wife moved all of our Ubiquiti money to ARM. Ubiquiti's doing really well now, but ARM's really, we did really well moving our money to ARM. So I may regret not taking money and leaving Ubiquiti and putting it ARM, but you always regret that. And I don't think too much about stocks. I try not to. It's a waste of time because that's not my expertise. I've heard of US Signal. I've never used them. Oh yeah, the highly recommend the server part deals. I didn't know. I got to reach out to them because they're doing sponsorships. I didn't even know they were doing sponsorships. I've recommended them many times, and so has Wendell. And Wendell's like, I've been recommended before they became a sponsor. So they sponsored and sent Wendell a bunch of drives. But yeah, their prices are great. I've not used it. I've been sticking with the Seagate ones, but I mean, 18 terabyte for $199, man. That's a lot. Yeah, I mean, this is a risk when you're doing things. You have that problem of I have a lot of data, and that data is going to take a long time to rebuild, and is what it is. I actually don't have that much data though. If you look at my data sets, there's two pools, Flashy and Rusty. If you think that their names denote the type of drives they are, trust your instincts. There's 4 terabytes free. This is the production stuff goes on Flashy for when I'm editing videos. So I record everything here while it's in editing mode. Once I'm done editing and I am finished the project, but some projects take months, so it may sit there a while before I get to it. Then it moves over here. So currently, I've actually, for all the videos I have on YouTube, is still only 23 terabytes of data. So it's not really that much. It's less than I expected it to be. But then you're right, because all the drives in here, resync them is when one goes out is can be a problem. Oh, what's in here? They're WDC drives. Whatever model that is. WD Red Pluses, according to a quick Google search. And then these are microns. How does one go about creating naming scheme for everything servers, VMs, switches within a lab? Usually you just find something that you like. I think a lot of the stuff at CWR has a bunch of Lord of the Ring names. So I always go for mostly simplicity when I name things. So but does ZFS not really off top, we're talking storage, but does running ZFS in a degraded state put any additional stress on other drives? No, it just doesn't have that. If one of the drives is gone bye-bye and died, the system will carry on, but it won't be writing to that drive. So it's not like stressing the other drives. I don't know how I feel about it. So my problem I've had with OpenWRT is it's nice, but not amazing. I think it's a good hobby project, and I love the fact that it exists. Last I looked, it just seemed too rudimentary for my needs. So I didn't have a lot of more opinion outside of that. So it doesn't fit my needs. So I like that they're making hardware. I love they're doing open source stuff and it seems affordable, but I don't really use it. So I need too many complicated things that OpenWRT I'm not clear can do. We do a lot of Seagate Exos, but I've had no problems with my WDs. We've done a lot of those. I had a lot of problems with the 14 terabyte ones, which I might work on a video for because I think I solved the problems with my 14 terabyte ones by doing firmware updates. So I have some more that need firmware updates because yeah, I've got a degraded VDEV here because this one faulted. And I'm having random faults on these drives, but after I reflash the firmware and wipe them, they seem to stop faulting. So I have to figure that out. And it's only these 14 terabyte models that have been around. These are older ones too. They've been around for 3 or 4 years now. They've been running, and they just get these faulted errors where they end up with a bunch of weird stuff. So, but overall, most of the Seagate ones work fine. You can already see how mine's set up. It's RAID Z2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wide RAID Z2 is how these are set up. Watch my permissions video for that one. I do not have, it would be, my permissions video is long and detailed for a reason. Oh, quantum Bigfoots. Yeah, those are cool. I think where's it at? I got it in here somewhere. There we go. Quantum Bigfoot. No, there's not. Well, I mean, I probably could do it on a TrueNAS. There's a Linux utility Seagate has. I think they're called C utility. If you look in, it's a common set of tools from Seagate, but that tool runs in Linux. I chose to remove the drives from the system and put them on another system and just do it. Matter of fact, I chose my Zima system for it. I had Debian loaded on my little Zima board, and I did all my work on that just because it was convenient. Yeah, figuring out a naming scheme can be tricky, though. That's for sure. Because it's nice when it gets consistent, but I also like this is, I like putting these in there. This is an XCP-ng feature. It'll let you put emojis in there. So my log server has, it's because I'm chopping up logs with it. This is shut down. I don't use it in production anymore. It's just an archive, but my Invoice Ninja server, when I was using this, is here. I just use the cloud one now. Bitwarden's got a lock. UniFi's got the little, icon here. The firmware update process is really simple. You run the utility, you download the firmware, you run the utility, and it pushes the firmware. It takes only a couple minutes. It's really easy. There's a Windows utility to do too. You don't have to do it in Linux. Yeah, I also didn't want to make any typos or mistakes because I've got an array of really good working drives, and I didn't want to break a working drive while trying to point at the wrong one. So I eliminated the risk to myself of doing something stupid by removing the drives from my system and putting them in another system. So and the only drives in the system were the one, I had 3 of them that needed firmware updates. All 3 were giving errors, and all 3 have stopped giving errors after the firmware update. Now, I have not put them back into the system from whence they came. Once I do that and rebuild them, then I'll know. Matter of fact, because I have another one that failed, this just happened on Saturday. I will grab those drives, and Monday I'm going to take them over to the office and put one in. So I got them here at my studio. Yeah, the Zima boards are pretty cool. Is there a way to Proxmox XCP-ng? Probably. I always just tell people, use something really simple like Clonezilla. You can get things from where they are to where you want them to be in a relatively easy way. Boring name. So my important thing I always say is that you should know what these things are in there. That's the biggest thing. So what are those things? And is that clear? Matter of fact, even in descriptions, I'm always, as best I can, let's be implicit. This is an Ubuntu server 2004 running UniFi 869, which I believe is the most current version that's out right now. And I will edit this to say what it's running if I update the server. So those are the things that are important, is that any of the things you have in here, like this is Graylog 6. Technically now it's 6.1, so I can add the 0.1. I guess I could put subversioning in there. Have really good notes. That's what's important. They have a description for a reason. Let's go further. Did you know that you can edit notes and put things right in here, and it attaches to the VM. So kind of novel. Would be nice avoiding to buy another one though, if I can rescue it. Yeah, I don't have solutions for when they start going bad. Sometimes I was shocked when someone told me the firmware updates would make that big of a difference, but they solved their problem with it. So they said it might help you. And I'm like, this is interesting. So I'm not done experimenting. And the nice thing is I have 3 drives and I got 30 drives or 27 drives altogether in that system. So I got some testing to do. I've got some drives to replace. And if I replace them and it works, cool, I'll suggest it to other people as well. Definitely XCP-ng. We have a bunch of clients that already have Meraki. Some people just really like them. So we manage a bunch of Meraki networks as well. I need to get me some more water, so I'm going to be right back. I got to remember how to get the be right back to show up, so I don't just leave with a blank screen. Where's that at? Oh, that's right. I got to do it this way. I think it's under this. All right. I'm going to be right back. And then I will carry on. I have plenty of time. I'll be doing this for a little while, but the be right back will come up. So just like it says, I will be right back. That literally was the most perfect timing. I literally sat down and it said done. That is so funny. I couldn't resist while I ran upstairs. My wife had an egg roll up there, and I'm like, ooh. I like egg rolls. I'm not using OBS right now, or I would. I might use OBS more because I'm doing more tuning with OBS, but yes, that is a better way to do it. Yeah. We have been using Kevin MacLeod stuff for years. Long before I was on YouTube, we used to use Kevin MacLeod with the Sunday Morning Linux Review. He's been around a long time. He's in the open source community, so yeah. How do you feel about using IIS on a Win 11 as a reverse proxy to enable HTTPS or HTTP server? I can find no reason in my head I would ever use Windows IIS. Veggie. No, there's not any reason to. I've already done the. Well, I'm not going to do OpenSense videos anymore. I should say I will do an updated video on UniFi. Yes, in UniFi and pfSense, but not. I'm not going to bother with OpenSense. I've said my part on OpenSense, and I will say no more. No voodoo beer. I haven't decided yet. It's it is 7:00. Is it time for a beer or is it time for more water? Next break, we'll decide. If you want to do a proof of concept with 3 Zima boards, can it support that? Yeah, that'll work. Caddy, Nginx, Traffic. There's a few different reverse proxies out there. The worst would always be the Microsoft one. I avoid all the Microsoft stuff. So, would the UNAS Pro be a good option for strictly Graylog storage? I don't know. Maybe. It does support NFS, so you could mount an NFS share on it, and maybe, yeah. Windows, just say no. Yeah, I have not. I mean, if you roll back enough years, there was times I was doing active server page stuff. I had done the ASPX stuff, forever ago, just because I was connecting it to databases that were Microsoft databases. But this goes back to like 2002, Tom. It was just an evil necessity I had to do, because even back then, I was, running open source stuff. I was an open source mail server admin since the 90s. So I generally leaned more towards the MySQL PHP world LAMP stack of the world it was back then. But there was a couple necessary evils for the way things are. Yeah, and I'm going to kind of put these questions together. Are you running the service on Windows 11 and does support server OS, and the service does support HTTPS? So I'm trying to add it reverse proxy. We just got rid of this is a video hopefully I'll get done in next week. We got rid of some Kemp load balancers, and the Kemp load balancer just did not. It's funny because they were paying for it, and the customer, we switched over to HA proxy, and this is a commercial production system in a data center, not running, just even at their office, but this is racked in a data center here in Michigan, and their move to HA proxy. They were like, this is so much faster. The latency is less. Like, they could never, even with the paid support with Kemp, I guess they weren't able, if I understood this correctly, to get the performance that they now have with HA proxy. So I'm a big fan of HA proxy. And by the way, they have HA firewalls. So they have HA. Ha ha ha. See what I did there? Oh, please tell me someone found that funny. Veronica, thank you for stopping by, and please take care. Oh, other people got it. Other people got it. That's going to make it into the video on it, by the way. It's, I mean, because if you run HAHA, ha ha ha. Ah. So something weird that I don't know if it's related to the problem you were having or not. Let me pull it up. I'll see if I still have the error. Where's that at? Devices. No, all the errors, I cleared them all. So they're not, I don't see any of them in here. But I had a camera having this problem. Man, it's one of those, you can't find it when you want it. But the camera was plugged into this port, and where's the little thing? If I'm not mistaken, yellow is, yellow's the 100. This was randomly dropping packets. It stopped. It did it like 3 days in a row, and then it decided to stop doing it. I don't know why. I was like, the camera's fine. The camera works, but it was just like random packet drop error. And I don't know. So I've seen it, but I can't reproduce it, and it stopped doing it. So now I don't know where the error is because it did it like 2 weeks ago. It's a balanced sense of humor. This is great. Remote desktop software is Mac, Windows, Linux, cross-compatible with UI. Screen Connect. That's what we use. I mean, it's commercial, but it works. Is there a place on UniFi to geo blocks when using built-in geo under the security, or should I just make a firewall rule enable logging? I don't know. I don't use their firewalls enough to answer that question. $230 watching, only 69 likes. Yeah, smash the like button. At what point would you consider on-prem directory versus cloud for a new build out? It's usually, I mean, if they're a big company, it's hybrid. If they're a small company, it's going to be the most frequently used is going to be like, Entra for, I'm assuming you're talking about like Active Directory. Drop packets, some sort of QoS or backplane stuff. No, it appears to be, as best I can tell, a problem with the YouTube stream. YouTube does this sometimes, and they don't give you any type of diagnostic. But as of right now, I've got 0 packet loss. I don't have any indicator for problems. Not there. Hold on. Where's? Yeah, I'm running through the diagnostics real quick. See if there's anything. Nope. No errors. No input/output errors. No. Uh, 5-minute 1 day options. Matter of fact, this is what's interesting. If you look at this, there's just nothing in here to indicate there's any problems. Like the packet loss percentage is 0%. The delay average is barely unchanged. I mean, you can see how many milliseconds this is. This is maybe where it dropped, but you're talking about 19 milliseconds versus it's so minor. And we can change this out to like 8 hours. Here's where I started the stream. So when I started the stream, it definitely went up, but it went up from this to this. So I'm not exactly sure. What do you use to monitor your network devices? For example, port information, etc. What port information do I want? I just use UniFi switches, and I use the information in UniFi switches. And you're probably thinking, but it doesn't give you detailed port information. You're right, and I don't need it unless I'm troubleshooting. And rarely does the volume of data on a port. I mean, there's circumstances why I need it, but most of the time I don't. Oh, let's see. I love pfSense packet loss detection. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes it's just one of those things. You run into these weird issues. The way we figured out as YouTubers is I have a bunch of other friends that are YouTubers, and we talk about, are you having problems too? Yeah, I'm having problems. Well, if all of us are having problems, either simultaneously, all of us living geographically separate areas, are all experiencing local problems that we can't reproduce anywhere else besides YouTube, or YouTube's having a problem. Yeah, yeah. Reverse proxy is a way to get rid of certificate warnings. I follow my HA proxy video. I've tried the HP ones. I'm certainly not impressed by them. They're usable. How's that? I don't think they're great. Switch my background. I actually have a few different backgrounds. There, I like that one. Would you probably need to pull out Wireshark to see what's happening? The problem is if I don't have any packet loss, there's not anything for Wireshark to tell me. Like I'm not seeing any packet loss. The way I would try to examine something like this, I would look at the connection and maybe set up some pinging between me and the destination server for YouTube, like where YouTube actually sends a stream. Now, I'm adding complexity for ease of use. The reason these comments display like this is I'm using StreamYard. So it actually goes to StreamYard and StreamYard heads over to YouTube. So that could be part of the problem. Maybe StreamYard's having a bad day. Maybe a lot of people are streaming right now, and that's where part of the problem is. Do you have any info about Wi-Fi 7 hardware revisions? Supposedly they are switching out from 1 chip to 2 chip for better stability. I have no information on that. Yeah, there's no self-hosted option on the Aruba. So FYI. How do you migrate physical server to XCP-ng? Usually you just use whatever bare metal restore utility you have, and you can do that. It's like the easiest way to do it. Back up with whatever backup utility, use the bare metal restore. Plan B, use Clonezilla. That works too. Happy Sunday. Absolutely. Didn't HP just buy Juniper? If I'm not mistaken, right? HP buys. I like that Google auto-completed junk. It just says that HP buy junk. Yes. I'm not. This is where products go to die and get maybe monetized. So I don't know. I don't know what the future of Juniper looks like with HP's acquisition. I have not used much myself. I have friends that have used it. They said it was nice. But having not used it, I don't have a lot of information on it. Future topic: managing IPv6 on a pfSense in your home lab. No, not likely. I maintain, and this is always a heated debate. I maintain that we will have something else. I don't know what something else is, but IPv6 adoption has been at a stall for years. It reached a point and it's pretty much plateaued. I have a feeling there will be some other methodology by which we move data across networks, and that methodology will replace IPv4 and IPv6. IPv6, I doubt will ever replace IPv4. But I don't bother. I turn off IPv6 because it sometimes causes problems. So my usual advice is disable it. But I know some people are going, but Tom, I don't have a public IP address. I get it. And I don't have an answer for that because there's so many headaches with how it works and where what doesn't work. And I pointed out a few times, kind of tongue in cheek, but there has been threats that came about because the IPv6 stack has been less tested. Therefore, people find flaws in it as they test it. And sometimes you're on the butt end of that flaw. Install WinMRTG or similar setup monitor your streaming destination. I can. The problem, there's a few issues. Sometimes they're using multicast addresses so they can change the address where it goes to. So putting in a static IP isn't really viable. And because it's going through StreamYard, I don't know if the problem is with StreamYard or with me. I'll have to do more testing. I don't know. Not IPv6 editors, dozens of them. Yeah. The real reason it stalled is all IPv6 does is give more addresses. It doesn't make things better or faster. So when businesses are going, how do we deal with this thing people want us to do? Well, what's the value in it? Well, for us, we'll have more public IP space. Do we need more? Well, not really. The home users definitely want more, but they're not driving a lot of the infrastructure adoption because any testing anyone's done and that added complexity, if it doesn't bring a business value, it's hard to get people to adopt it. And if the businesses and the websites you want to go to don't adopt IPv6, the home users have a hard time with IPv6. So yeah, I think that's a lot of why it stalled. Steve Gibson over on Security Now, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, he read some letters that were from some of the developers of it. And I thought about doing an IPv6 video because it's based on a lot of material that he gathered. And I've done some of the same reading and we read some of the same news sources. Yeah. You might not be far off. Maybe, and I don't know. This is completely speculative science fiction at the moment. We figure out quantum entanglement, and suddenly we don't need wires anymore, and we just have a bunch of quantum entangled systems that are able to, you somehow pair them for entanglement, and then suddenly I can transport the data from where it is to where I want it to be via quantum entanglement. Yeah, your quantum tunneling network. That would be a fun troubleshooting. Yeah, now the cell phone networks solved the volume of phone problem, and they have pretty much adopted IPv6 across their cell networks. But just the cell side of their networks, they do an IPv4 conversion to get the data across, because if they didn't, lots of things on your cell phone wouldn't work. But you're right, the IPv6 is prevalent on cell phones. I don't know why you'd want to run a game server through a reverse proxy, but anything you're adding between the game server, such as a reverse proxy, will have some impact on how fast the data goes through because you're putting it through more things. So that's it's hard to say. It's going to depend on the game, but anytime you add more steps, yes, you're potentially going to cause a latency. The only issue with I actually think you did not misspell that. We will start calling it I want them to work. So it's no longer quantum tunneling. It's I want them tunneling. I want them to do this. Yeah, all we have now is entanglement. We don't have quantum entanglement yet. I am wondering of something. Let's see. There we go. Now we got the math. So you claimed, where did that question go? I seen someone post this. Yeah, the observable stuff is there. Didn't I just see someone post that they've exhausted RFC 1918? That's what I'm just saying. Yeah, that person must have deleted their comment because I was just did a calculation here. Yeah, the total usable, that's a lot of devices. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have a network that has more than 17 million devices, but that would be interesting. So thanks again for the video on the monoprice cables. I picked up a set and cleaned up my lab. Yeah, I like those cables. They're definitely solid. Oh, my latency went up just a little. But it seems I don't see any changes here in terms of the stream. But we've now picked, a slightly new one, but no packet loss still. Huh. Odd. All right. Back to what we were talking about here. What were we talking about? I got distracted because I went and ate some Chinese food. or I ate an egg roll. I didn't really eat much food. My wife was like, "Hey, I got an egg roll for you." So that's the luxury of 0% packet loss. I'm obviously, I'm not paying my server. I don't know where, here let's try this. I got an idea. Let's monitor StreamYard because that's where this is actually going. So if I go and pull this, that's broken. So what we'll do is switch the way we're monitoring things. I'm just monitoring the gateway to get that, but probably what we need is to monitor that. So we'll ping StreamYard.com and see if we're getting there. Oh, look, so that's interesting. So no packet loss, but there's some deviation here. We have a 104 right here. We have a 113 here. So StreamYard's got some changes here. Yeah, I could use MRTG to monitor all the hops. We actually have a lot of clients in rural areas. Starlink is their backup. You want to get into compliance as a service? We don't really talk much about that because it's far from my level of expertise. And we do compliance for our clients, but it's not where Tom spends his time. I am by no means a CMMC or NIST expert, but we actually employ people who do CMMC and things like that for our clients. So, but none of them are going to participate in the forums. Hate to break the news. So you won't find much information in my forums about it. Yeah, I wonder. There's probably a pretty good tool I could use to. I'm trying to think of what's a good command line tool in Linux to use for that. I like how old this website looks. I'll find something out for that later. But yeah, there's at least some deviation we can see. Actually, you just run a differential here and to see if I get a loss at the same time. Oh, we did. 105 and 108. So that's interesting. Yeah, if that happens in pattern, you have a router in between you and StreamYard that's doing some shaping. I have the watch for a period of time to confirm. Yeah, I'd have to do a lot more. Open up more windows and do more pings to see what it does or what doesn't happen. Yeah, these are, my ping time's relatively low. It's just a once in a while thing here. Oh, we went up to 96. Interesting. Yeah, I could look to see if there's a retransmit in there. Interesting. I have to turn my head to look at it. It's from the way the screen are. But I'm trying to coincide it as I'm watching the live. There's a little notice I get in StreamYard on the screen to let me know there's latency. I don't think I can actually. I can share that. It turns into Inception. You envy everyone's network knowledge. Yeah, it's It's one of those things I've told people, as much as you can, if you can get some friends and hang out with them on here or hang out online, asking network questions. And I still do this. The folks over at Clara Systems did a live stream on Thursday, and I joined the live stream. I only had like one question, but I still picked up some interesting information from the developers, and that's why I listen to so many podcasts. You gotta constantly be learning in this industry to stay good at it. But yeah. The good news is I'm not seeing any packet loss, and I haven't seen another, like, I'm seeing a occasional high ping, but I'm not seeing the notice from StreamYard that there's a problem. The dual LAN in my home rack, next door neighbor and I have 2 connections between us, and both go to my pfSense. They're slower ASCLs to fail over for my fiber. Very cool. What does UniFi Cloud Key actually do? Like an on-prem controller device, if I install a UniFi controller on Linux, I don't have to buy a cloud key. Yeah, the reason to buy a cloud key is so you don't have to set up a UniFi controller on Linux. So it's an optional thing. You don't have to buy a cloud key. You can buy a cloud key. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Oh, well. Nothing obvious is what I should say. Just let this run. Yeah, my system's not a problem. It's not under much load. But I did this because I wanted to see how much CPU Chrome was using. So that, yes. Let's see the ping on the pfSense firewall itself. Yeah. I mean, I can ping StreamYard from the firewall, but oh, that would be interesting. Hold on. I mean, I could set up pfSense to monitor StreamYard as the monitor address to give me the quality of the internet. I'm not gonna mess with that because I think that will cause another problem I don't want to address. Yeah, I mean, Spotify, I can imagine if you're doing something like that. Yeah, that's where you would actually potentially run out. It's one of those things like, tell me where you work without saying where you work. We ran out of RFC 1918. Okay, you work for one of the hyperscalers or are dealing directly with one of the largest products like that, like Spotify. So I just don't need more. If you notice, I'm using 11 gigs out of 64 gigs. Why would I put more in? What would I do with it? Well, it's the jitter's a little high, but it's also I'm not the only one here doing stuff, and I'm on a cable modem. So that sometimes might be where the problem might be. Where did the other one? There it is. But yeah, I don't know. Your delay averages are, my average 16 milliseconds is not terrible. See, it's making it all the way around to world with all the way to New Zealand. Yeah, we got servers that have terabytes of memory in them. I actually have QoS set up on my system. Yeah, set up an iPerf server and do that. That would be fun. I'm sure that would not run me out of bandwidth immediately. A lot of people worry about their public IP address for getting hacked. It's less about being hacked. It's more about everyone would just jam up all your bandwidth, and I'd have to change my IP address. That'd be a pain. Not a real big pain. It's not that many things tied to my IP address, but there's a couple things. Where's that at? I pull that up. I was going to pull up the quality stuff on mine. I wanted to just hide some things first. I was closing stuff. Too many things are open. There we go. See, I do have the limiters set up for this. I don't know if this is where the problem is or not. You know what? This might be it. This should probably be a little bit less. Because I was messing with these and I shouldn't have been. I got to go make sure they're all back where they're supposed to be. This shouldn't be at 50. This should be, let's see if this breaks something. This should be at like 40. Reload rules. Does this break things? Does this cause the stream to stop? Can you still hear me? Oh man, yeah. I close things that are open. I have too many distractions. Yes, they just wonder why it's upside down here. Do you have your Home Assistant on there? Home Assistant is on the same network as my computer because I don't see it as a threat. I control it. I don't think it's going to turn into an attack device. So I do have it on the same network as me. Yeah. So I wonder if that'll fix it because my bandwidth is maxed at 50. That's what I get from my provider. So you want to set it a little bit less than your max. I just bumped it to 40 for the hell of it, but maybe that'll fix it. What point do you suggest starting an LLC? I've been doing many side jobs. I don't know enough about business side of things. When you want to have more complicated taxes, you register that you own a business and your taxes get more complicated. But you can Google to get an idea. I'd recommend a lawyer to do it right. But you generally form a business entity to protect your personal assets. That's your reason for doing it. So you form businesses to protect you personally. So Tom Lawrence, the person, is different than Lawrence Systems, the business. Have you guys used Cloudflare Spectrum? I have not. I don't know much about them. My Home Assistant is on my IoT VLAN because I need to talk with everything that's on that VLAN. And that's fine. Well, that comes back with the complicated taxes. The tax system allows you to expense things which are often referred to as write-offs. So when you expense your phone for your business, you're able to pay for the phone with pre-tax dollars and you're lessening the money in the business. So you have more dollars left over that you can use for something else. I said that wrong. I'm not going to go into the whole details of business right now, but essentially, yes, write-offs. We'll just say write-offs, yes. And it's a good description right here. LLC, or in my case, I'm an S corp. A business entity exists to put a firewall between the personal you and the business. Therefore, if someone says you made a mistake, and they'll always say you made the mistake, but if you're doing so under the flag of your company, they will sue your company, not you, because you are protected by doing it as a company. Is bandwidth change you made or traffic shaper? It's a traffic shaper. Well, it's a limiter specifically. I did a video on how to do limiters. These are limiter setups. I think those, I don't know. I got to look at whatever I follow the guidelines for pfSense. I start with those and then tweak as needed. These look like I haven't been touched. I run Home Assistant on VM with 2 NICs. And a second main network is you talk to IT devices without complex firewall rules. The other thing about Home Assistant and what works for me when it comes to Home Assistant is that Home Assistant is not it doesn't have many things to talk to that are on networks. Everything's Z-Wave and Zigbee. So I'm using this. And because I'm using the Z-Wave and Zigbee modules, it's not really a concern because all the stuff is attached through those. So it doesn't use networking to talk to the devices. All the cameras, the lights, the lamps, the settings for any of them, the color ranges, everything's controlled right here via Home Assistant talking Z-Wave or Zigbee, because I got a couple different things in here. Yeah. It works really well. Yeah, I've been looking at the zone firewall. I've been waiting for that to come out because that's actually when I will do my new video for UniFi, because they've gotten a lot more features. And that zone firewall stuff, really cool. Yeah, the ESP home devices are pretty neat. I have a few friends that went wild with them and have like, I think my one friend told me he's got like 40 of them now. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. If you've, if you got all of those. Oh man. Well, I might wander off here. It is 7:30. And I've been going at this for a couple hours. Does anyone else have any more questions before I wind all this down? As I am a little tired and I want to finish drawing out these diagrams. The good news is, so far, no one complained about the diagrams, so I think they might have liked them enough that I can do a presentation based on how I have them. So, we have no snow right now in Detroit at all. None. Yeah, it's a matter of fact, it's raining. So this is you're seeing mist because it's like foggy, wet, and windy out. We don't have any snow at all. So, but thank you all for joining. I'll see you all on Thursday. Gonna get back to work and I'm gonna get that video done because people are asking for how the lab is set up. And obviously we talked through it today, but I'll get through a more detailed how I set it up, how it's broken down, and how things work. So looking forward to getting that done and looking forward to hear from all of you. And thank you. Take care.